I've been told that people seem to think that I love to hear myself talk. And it is very true. I do love to hear myself talk. They'll never get me to admit it, but I do. All right, Bellular, please take it away. Tell us what's been happening with physical media, because apparently there are a lot of countries that have been making rules and regulations against Sony, essentially saying you have to make physical media or something like that. So let's see what Bellular has for us.
From 2028, Sony alone decides what a game costs and even how long you are allowed to use it.
Yep.
Now, those are not my words. They are lifted from a legal claim that PlayStation are fighting in court right now. And what it alleges is bad for you. That, not the market, not a retailer putting on a sale or anything like that, that those things will not dictate the price of a game. Because going forward, there is one storefront, one price, and zero way around it. Because
Okay, so that's going to be interesting because I'm a little concerned about how they might apply that to Steam, right? I mean, I guess there are other storefronts, but really Steam has kind of an unenforced monopoly where they are just the best storefront. I hope that there is no way that they can protract this lawsuit to create precedent to go after Steam. I love your country. Hell yeah. This is coming from your country, because if this is coming from your country, then big W. Like, huge, massive fucking W. I think I just heard thunderclouds myself. Anyway, I hope that, like I said, this is very, very narrowly focused on only the PlayStation marketplace, only like Sony itself, because if it is very narrowly focused, then good, that's what we want. Because we don't want anything bad to happen to Steam, because like I said, I think Steam is probably the best platform, because just it is the best platform.
that is what the end of discs actually means. And as it turns out, that's not even the only major legal case that we have to deal with in this video. A lawsuit over PlayStation Store just settled in California. A $2 billion class action currently sits.
Okay, wait, hang on. I want to read this. So, PSN Digital Games settlement. If during a period of April 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2023, you purchased a digital game through the PlayStation Store that was previously available through game-specific vouchers, you may be eligible to receive a payment from a class action lawsuit. Okay.
Settled in California. A $2 billion class.
In the UK, it is illegal for companies to abuse their dominant positions. This includes directly or indirectly imposing unfair purchasing or selling prices or other unfair trading conditions. We believe that PlayStation occupies a dominant position in relation to the digital distribution of PlayStation games and in-game content, and that it has been unfairly charging its UK customers too much for digital games and in-game content purchases through the PlayStation Store. That's interesting. I'm wondering how legally the argumentation for that works, because PlayStation games on the PlayStation platform seem to be proprietary, or at least I would think they would be proprietary, which would not constitute as a different market. Interesting.
This action currently sits with a tribunal in London. In Poland, regulators are investigating. Over in Mexico, all
right, well, hang on. We gotta check out what European Texas is doing.
Poland.
Office of the competition. Okay, the president has initiated primary. Okay, so yeah, this is on Steam. Okay.
Regulators are investigating. Over in Mexico,
Mexican lawmakers file antitrust complaint against PlayStation and Sony over PS Store following the potential end of physical games. Okay.
Are circling, and
interesting, from Mexico.
Disc announcement
here we go. Netherlands. Sony disc-free 2028 plan hands it to Total Price Control. Dutch group warns in exclusive. That word. That acronym. Okay.
Literally in the middle of a live court hearing. They are absolutely in a PR and legal storm of their own making.
I hope they all win their other cases, because fuck Sony.
An expert. They, of course, knew what the online reaction would look like, and they now wait for this storm to pass. Now, that was the read in the overall situation that analyst Dr. Serkan Toto gave to IGN, only days after PlayStation announced the end of discs. And what he said did make sense, because that is so very often how things go. Even with PlayStation, the whole no disc, no buy boycott splintered the moment the 2 digital-only Black Ops ports arrived.
Okay, so I remember this. Most people, as I said, have a self-control problem, which makes total sense because, I mean, this is completely something that is driven by people's own values. And unfortunately, people will not, like, they'll say one thing, but they really mean another. So why do I feel this? It's going to change it. I mean, I'm hoping that it does because it's now a legal action. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to rely on groups of people because it's hard to get them all to do the same thing because there's no enforcement mechanism. But once the law gets involved, the law itself is its own enforcement mechanism. They, at point of gun, are able to tell companies they must adhere to the law. That's just how it is. Consumer rights groups can't really do that. They can lobby, but they can't really do that. But the law, once you've got that on your side, things will change.
But the storm has not fully passed, and while comment sections full of angry gamers may be survivable to Sony, what could hurt a lot more is, of course, the courtrooms.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to using our computers, especially as developers, stuff is changing so fast.
True.
And boot.dev are keeping up with
I'm
that.
really
now,
like...
you don't have to like AI
I
coding
hope
tools to maybe
that these lawsuits will do
what they're
something.
actually doing. In fact,
And like I said,
skepticism
it
is
takes an
probably a
incredibly
better
strong
reason
person
actually
to
go
see
and
a
take
game that
look
they
on
really
it.
want to get.
And
Like,
that's
we'll
the
just use
idea
Black
behind
Ops
this new
Sport as
project
an
from
example.
a sponsor
You can
of
say all you
Boot.dev,
want,
where
like,
you
I
can
don't
build
want to
yourself
buy this
a small
because
coding agent. Literally, you can
it
build
sends the
harnesses
wrong
yourself.
message.
It's so cool.
But most
This
people are going to
will
go out
read
and buy it.
files,
They'll say
edit
one
code,
thing and do
run
another,
Python,
which you
and
just got to
do loops on
expect.
its own feedback until
That's
the
why
job
it's
is
so
done.
important to
In
make
this, you
sure
get
that
20
these
lessons
legal
per 12
cases
hours,
do
and
something.
you've got a
Because
major update
legally,
this
they
month.
have to.
And you know what? As I've been automating more and more,
Yeah,
of
I'm
the
not a
boring
PlayStation fan,
back-end
but you can
parts
hope for
of
the
running a
best. The
business
problem
and
is
replacing
like,
some
even
SaaS
if you
tools I
are
feel
or are
ripped
not a
off by,
PlayStation
this
fan,
is the one I take. I've been
this
building
has a
some
downstream
agent-driven
effect for
tools
every
for
other
real work
system
via
and
Hermes.
every
It's been
other
so fun.
grouping of
Basically just
things,
been
right?
automating
So
really
once
boring
Sony gets
stuff
away with
about,
this,
like,
how long do you
running the
think it's
business that I've
before
always hated
Xbox
doing
looks at
and
that and
always
says,
slacked in doing?
we can do this
Now,
too?
though, I'm
How long
kind of,
before
on top
like
of all my
most
shit. It's
physical
awesome.
companies, so
Seriously,
like movies,
automating
say
things
we're
is
not going to
so
put out
fun.
DVDs
And
anymore?
with this on boot, actually implementing
But you do want to
Boot
buy Black Ops.
yourself
It has
is
Richtofen.
how
Listen,
you go from, I
we
don't know,
understand.
being
I
some
get
sort
it.
of prompter or slopper
Totally get
as I
it.
like to call them, to,
But
well, being
that's
an
why I'm saying
engineer
is
who
like,
knows how to use
I
the tool in a
personally,
responsible,
as my own
effective
self,
way.
will look
'Cause
at
as all
something
this
and say,
stuff
I'm not
grows,
going to buy
you
it.
can
Like
never get
GTA,
away
I'm
from the
not going to buy
simple
it.
thing
Not
that
because I
judging
haven't
the
played
output of
GTA,
any of these systems
because it would be
is
great
your
probably
job
for my
and your
stream and I'd probably
responsibility.
play it for
And
stream.
Boot
I'm not going to buy
absolutely
it because
handles this
I very
right.
much
And
believe
of
that
course,
they
they do so
are
much more. Every
mistreating
course
me
they
as a
have
as a
has free
customer if I
interactive
were to buy
demo,
it.
so you can
No
actually
physical
try all
copy,
the stuff
go
out
fuck off.
before you spend
No
anything. And the whole
$100, fuck
platform
off.
is
Like,
so
I'm not
full
going to
of,
do
like,
it.
heart, craft, sauce. It's literally made for people like us. The whole
It would
thing
be
plays
so
like
well,
an
but see,
RPG.
they have this,
So all you need to do
they
is
have the
scan
lost
QR
cost
code, head to
fallacy, right?
boot.dev and
They've
use
already
code
spent
Better
so
Than News
long.
to get 25% off your entire first year on an annual plan.
Boom. They've already spent so long pursuing this particular direction that it's almost absurd to them in their mind to be like, all this work that we put towards getting here, why would we want to throw that work away? I think that's kind of where they're at. It would be simpler if they said, we're just going to keep printing games, because it really wouldn't like change much of their bottom line. And honestly, it's better because when you adjust for the actual numbers, most people do buy physical copies. But they're going to refuse to admit it because they're going to be able to save $5 on each game purchase that's going to go directly into their pocket down the line.
Serkan Toto said the storm would pass. He was talking about the money side of things. The, little financials, as maybe some people cancel their PS Pluses or choose not to buy a game. Basically, per his maths,
I will never buy a game subscription like PlayStation Plus or whatever the Xbox equivalent of it is because there's no reason to. I have the PC. I have the best gaming system in the world. And if you're going to hide something behind a purchasing plan or access to it behind a purchasing plan, well, now I don't give a shit. I'm going to fucking pirate it because fuck you.
those sorts of things wouldn't even matter. And he
I'm not
framed
paying
that
16
even,
different
say,
subscribing
500,000
subscriptions for
cancellations would be like
2
a
different
1%
things.
drop in the overall Sony numbers, the sort of thing that wouldn't really be a dent in their digital revenue. It just wouldn't matter. But what would matter is, say, no disk drives to build for the PS6, no discs to press, things like that that'd save PlayStation money. But not just
Sure.
that, because the cost of pressing a disc is
Also,
probably
the
less
direct
than the
ownership.
opportunity cost of that.
Another down the line effect of it, again, that we've gone over that's very important, is they can just shut the game off at any point in time. If you don't own a physical copy to it, you don't own it. And you cannot play an inferior good to the new good that they're trying to put out. So say like game 1 comes out and then the sequel game 2 comes out. They can just shut off your access to game 1 and say you can't play game 1 anymore if you don't own it physically. Now you have to buy and play game 2, which directly translates to a sequel sale. To be honest, nowadays I don't buy discs, saves the trouble, but I know what they're talking about. But I do know what they're talking about. Exactly. Like I don't buy discs because I just like I can't. All of the indie games that I want to play that are only digital only purchases make sense because they don't have the money to press like a disc for it. Sure. But and there's convenience for a bunch of other things. The problem is the down the line effects, as I believe you are articulating, that if you don't own an actual or have the ability to own a physical disc or get a physical disc of something, you don't actually own it. I was going to do the joke, but it's getting a little bit old. Exactly. It's like imagine like how that can get a little bit old. It's just like, dude, we're in a position where now everybody's just going to look at piracy saying, yeah, it's an old joke, but at least it works.
Jesus. We now know that at least one of those factories has been repurposed for optical components. And the argument is, of course, that enough of the audience already buy digital
what a world to live in.
Shortfall from those who never will. So if you want to stick by your principles, it's basically, yeah, sure, but nobody else
last
really
disc
will,
that I bought a
you'll
bunch
just
of
be depriving
video
yourself of
movies on
games.
DVD.
And it's the sort of thing where I hate those vibes
that I did
but
for movie night.
I do think it's broadly true. It's how boycotts tend to go when it's over something that people fundamentally do want.
But those can go away just immediately, just as much as because like
Call of Duty Modern
this is
Warfare 2
this is
having no
upstream of
dedicated servers
other
on
discs
PC,
no
and
longer
that
being
famous
available.
Steam screenshot of the Steam group for the boycott on launch night.
Yep. There it is. Boycott Modern Warfare 2. All of one of them's in game in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Imagine.
Where most of them were playing the damn game that they said they would boycott.
Wow.
And the thing is, the data behind Sony's bet does look kind of brutal. As an example, when the new Wolverine trailer was flooded with more than 10,000 comments, most asking for discs, Zircana's Matt Piscatella answered with some numbers. He said that in the week ending July 11th, exactly 2 PlayStation games sold more than 10,000 physical copies in the US. And across every PlayStation release, PS4 and PS5, first party and third party, 7 games have passed 100,000 physical copies sold so far this year. Those obviously are plenty of sales, but they're pretty small compared to the rest.
Now, those analytics ended up proving a little bit controversial. A lot of people didn't really believe what was going on or had questions. So Piscatella went a bit further in response to a few conspiracy theories that he was basically underselling how these physical games had been performing in the US. So Matt then shared this trend line of total new physical game sales per year, and it is...
I think one thing that we're probably not talking about here is how marketplaces have gone from digital or gone from physical to digital. Just like, you know, even in 2010, I remember going to a game store on a games release. So like around 2015, most things had already transitioned to digital only sale or digital sales because it's just easier, right? And it's both a consumer and I would say industry trend because it makes things easier. It's not about us buying it online. That's the problem. It's about us not like owning what we purchase. That's what's really truly at the heart of the issue. It's not about whether or not people buy physical media. It's about whether or not people are allowed to own the media that they purchase.
Under 40 million per year in the US over the last 2 years.
And we're like,
but on PlayStation,
this type of a graph and this type of reasoning is talking past the point of what people are trying to say. Because people are trying to say that we want to be able to own what we have. And he's saying, well, people don't want to actually buy it physically. These two arguments are two different things. And they're being conflated together to mean the same thing.
they haven't sold more than 20 million physical units in a year since 2021. And of
Sure.
the 7 games that have exceeded the 100,000 physical sales bar within the first half of the year, he says that so far, not one of those that they can track anyway has sold more than 275,000 units.
Sure.
Overall, then, the trend
And
line
that's 275,000 units that Sony can't turn off because they don't have you in a digital ecosystem. That's why they're upset about it.
for demand in the US does look rather clear.
Now, that's far from the only discussion and analysis has went on in this. Many have suggested that the top-line data is basically a result of PlayStation manipulating numbers to make digital look good. The claim
Sure.
is that around
Again, but it doesn't matter. Who cares if they buy them physical? It's about people wanting to actually own their own stuff. That's a symptom of it for sure, and it shows like the relevance of it. But people are going to buy it digitally, and if people were to be able to have unfettered ownership and like a guarantee that they're going to be able to access it at any point in time without having any online DRM or any like stoppage in the ability to download it, people would just own stuff online. They'd be totally okay with that.
80% of games are sold digitally. Now, the argument is that this is
Which is
comparing all
hard to
digital
do,
games
I would
with
assume.
only games sold in stores, which is, of course, a false equivalence. There's loads of games
Mm-hmm.
available in the PlayStation Store that you will not be able to find in a physical store. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really seem sense. It doesn't really seem fair. But that's not the only thing people point to. There's the data that is from the 2023 Insomniac hack. That's really interesting because it showed that only 33% of sales were digital for copies of games like, say, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, or 57%
I could imagine this.
for Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. Basically, with numbers like that, it sure seems that when given the option, people bought physical at over 2 to 3 times the rate.
Because it's about the experience of going into a store, picking up the box, looking at the box, having the box, taking it to the customer service person, scanning it in and taking it home in the anticipation of the drive of being able to pop that disc into the tray.
That Sony's top line number implies, but just because some
A lot of
data
talking, but no words
seems
coming
to
out.
support
Exactly.
the argument doesn't make it solely manipulation. We always have to remember, in all things, not just something like this, that while you can have one bit of really convincing looking data,
That's
is
exactly
often a
what it
wider
is.
picture and there's often context. One of the reasons you can't just look at one medical trial or scientific paper and just take it as being perfect and gold. Now, one wrinkle to this is Sony's financials actually suggests that they overstate the impact of physical games. You see, they also
Interesting.
count revenue from first
Disgusting
and third-party
Spider-Man
game
2.
software sold
Yeah, I heard.
bundled with PlayStation
Like I said,
console.
I'm so glad I never got into PlayStation gaming because it's just like in general, because like I definitely had games that I wanted on the PlayStation for sure, but I'm so glad I didn't get into PlayStation gaming because it's just like, or I guess console gaming in a way. I just feel like I'm always constantly being fed like lesser quality games than what I can find on Steam.
and PlayStation VR. Now, the latter may be literally several
I don't know, maybe
games,
I'm a bit
but
of a purist
there is
in
something you
that,
should think
but
about there. The 80-20 split is actually subsidized by every game bundled with a new console, and those copies count as physical. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that Sony are right and that the community's wrong. Far from it, actually. I think it's very much the case, though, that what Sony are doing is really unpopular with many of us. Because of that, there is data out there that does cast doubt on what Sony is saying, and it's absolutely
like I will say one thing that I'm so happy about is I can go into my other room, grab my PlayStation 3. I think it's a PlayStation 3. Pretty sure it's a PlayStation 3. It might be PS4. I'm not sure. I can grab that game console. I can pop Bloodborne in there. I can play Bloodborne. Boom. Easy. Now I don't have to like depend on like making sure that the PS4 store is up. I have it physically on the disc, ready to
case
go.
that, yeah, Sony are totally going to
I own that game.
supply the numbers they've got that make their stuff look the best, that makes their
And
new
I can give it to
direction
my
look
friend to
very
play.
sensible. They'll obviously want to do that. And while on the conspiratorial side, things do look convincing if you solely contain it to just those numbers being talked about, those are also not all of the numbers, and loads of those numbers are just, well, ones that we do not have.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, though, there can be a more simple and cold truth than just the conspiracy. I think it is the case that there still is a sizable market for physical games. That's obviously true to just about anyone, including PlayStation. And I think, quite simply, PlayStation
PS4?
have decided that it's
Pretty
now
sure-
small enough for
Was Bloodborne on PS? Was it? I thought it was released for the PS3. Sorry, sidetrack. No, you're right. It was on PS4. Imagine.
For them to leave behind. I mean,
I thought it was
what,
on PS3 for some
10,000
reason.
comments under a trailer
Maybe my brain's
and,
cooked.
no response. They obviously think they can tank it, and it seems they are pretty sure that all the people who care about this have made a lot of noise, and it's not enough to make them reconsider their plan. And the price for leaving those people to them is worth having, because what it means is full price control with no second-hand market. It means stronger monthly active users thanks to, well, downloads and store access, and it means even better margin on production and sales. And what's been so...
And like I said, the implied issue is that they can just shut it off whenever they just want you to be done with the game.
all left out of the conversation is that this did not start with a disc announcement. This is actually a plan Sony's been working toward since 2019.
Skyrim, okay. Maybe I was confusing it with Skyrim.
That's got them in court. In 2019, PlayStation stopped allowing third-party stores to sell digital copies of their games. And since 2021, that has been biting them in the legal ass. Though
Good.
At least their lawyers will, of course, be able to justify their existence.
Hang on, let me see this. So GameStop stores just got a memo saying that Sony will no longer provide full game digital download codes to retailers, not just GameStop. Starting on April 1st, digital games will only be available straight from PSN after that date. Add-on content, PSN money cards will still be available. Here's full text outlining these changes. Sony full games. That's okay. Good job, Sony.
So a big win for them. But what I mean when I say bit them in the ass, that is when consumers filed a lawsuit that actually just ended with a $7.85 million settlement in California. It argued that players were getting worse deals because of PlayStation reducing
I can imagine that, yeah.
Over in the UK then, there's a class action suit worth $2 billion. It finished being heard in May, and it's being considered by the tribunal currently. Then over in Poland...
Again, I still think this goes past, like, the actual problem is, like, these people making decisions on it, I would assume, are thinking that, oh, you have a physical copy with a digital code in it, which means that you have a physical good that can prove your purchase. No, you're still buying the same exact fucking thing that you would buy on the PSN store, essentially. You just have a physical box that shows that you got the code in it. The problem is we shouldn't be debating on whether or not they should be legally allowed to take it out of the store or have to place it in the store or something like that. We should be really having a debate on whether or not the code itself constitutes ownership of an object.
Our Office of Consumer Protection
And reopen up their EULAs.
To take complaints to the country's antitrust commission, and
Good.
I have to imagine that's far from the end of it, especially because PlayStation's decision to kill physical games has absolutely galvanized all of these movements, and it's made their arguments stronger. Here's the thing. That case that the announcement of physical games dying quite literally interrupted live in court, it is the one to watch because it could really matter. So, it was the Dutch class action case. It was brought by a non-profit. I'm not going to mangle their name, but it was brought by them. And the hearing kicked off at the very end of June this year. So it is very much a present thing that's currently ongoing. And their aim for this class action is to reopen the platform's digital games market to other companies and to win compensation for the region's players. WCCF Tech were able to get an exclusive statement from the group as the trial began.
I'm curious about, like, whether or not in this particular case they're going to be talking about, like, what actually defines ownership, because I feel like if they play this case right, there might be some legal precedent coming out of wherever this case is coming from that might actually give us some real consumer protections over what we purchase. It's just a whole Arrowhead hate, undeserved, but on a much bigger scale, since the hate was mostly about Arrowhead controlling the Galactic War. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I think what you're trying to say, from my perspective, from trying to interpret that, is that people were not happy about that Arrowhead was controlling the war, but I mean, I think that they misadvertised the war for sure, but I understand that they had a game master basically making all the decisions. That's why I always said, like, from the beginning, the war really didn't mean anything because we're just going to be doing what the developers tell us to do. because I think they didn't expect as many people to be able to do what they were doing. I think that there's some good arguments on both sides of that. And 1 year, well, you buy chocolate bar, you don't own the chocolate bar. Exactly. They can take it back at any point in time. It was Domino's, right? Domino's says, well, with changing consumer trends, we've decided to move from physical pizza sales to digital pizza sales only.
Clearly, they believe PlayStation's recent decisions have just
Like,
given
holy
their
fuck,
case
dude.
more weight. Here's the quote. The end of physical discs removes the last place where a PlayStation game could still be bought and sold at a competitive price. No discs means no second-hand market and no alternative to the PlayStation Store. So, from 2028, Sony alone decides what a game costs and even how long you are allowed to use it.
That part, as long as you are allowed to use it. This part right here, I want to see become the major litigating principle.
That is exactly the harm.
I don't care. I literally don't care about any of the other bullshit. All this other stuff doesn't fucking matter. The only thing that matters is how long you are allowed to use it, because then you can open up the debate to ownership.
PlayStation claim is about. A price can never be fair when the buyer is left with no ownership and no alternative.
Right there. Buyer is left with no ownership. Boom.
Brutal statement.
Please, please, for the love of God.
Good news is that another Dutch outfit seems to have broadly proved the litigants' points here. You see, what they found is that on average, for both first and third-party games, you could find a game cheaper physically than you could in the PlayStation.
I think the problem is Arrowhead has a narrative that they want to play out, and they refuse to allow the player base to make any meaningful changes to the state of the war. And I can pull out a practical reason for that, because the war being in a state of consistency is better so that they can plan their next content releases. But if they decided, like a group of Helldivers decided to just blitz down an entire sector of the game, say like removing the automatons from the first part of it, if that had happened not according to a plan that they wanted to put out, and everybody just pushed them out of the galaxy, then they wouldn't be able to develop for the automatons anymore. They can't allow that based on its principle. But I also think that they don't respect the drive that most Helldivers have to do something like and make an impact on the map, in basically making things nearly impossible for people to group together to do.
Store. That's something just about any of us can do by looking at a local store, but in this case it was the finding from an outlet called Tweakers, whose Price Watch service tracks the lowest price in games. Basically, they ran a study on the Game of the Year nominees since 2021, wherever a game had both a standard edition PS5 disc and a PSN store listing. And what they basically found is that deep PSN sales can mitigate this a bit, where you can actually see PlayStation Store prices drop below that of third-party physical retailers. But on average, without sale prices, physical actually still wins. And what that means is that without the existence of those discs, potential customers would indeed be at the mercy of PlayStation.
Yeah, you see all this like gray space right here. Like, this is what they're going for. This is just like, okay, this is all the money that they could be making,
with no way to benefit from competition.
Okay, PlayStation.
On price. If you are a person who buys things, competition is good. It works out in your favor. Now, on this story, particularly with physical games, there is one obvious reason for the trend, and it's physical storage. Not literally storage on the discs, I mean, like storage of the actual discs. Once a store has copies in the warehouse, they of course have to pay to keep those copies there. And at a certain point, the cost of keeping a game on the shelf just outweighs the profit from selling it.
Oh my god, you're so late. That's okay, Master Builder. Welcome, welcome.
Take that prominent slot in the actual storefront. Plus, competitors might offer prices you'll have to match.
Yeah, honestly, Zombie, if you have like some insight, since it's coming from your country, that you could be able to expand on it, that'd be much appreciated in the chat here. Mostly because, like I said, we're depending on translations, and there could be a lot of different verbiage. But what I'm most curious about, or rather, what is most important to me, is whether or not they are opening up the litigating question to ownership as well, because I think that will have the most excised and impactful legal argumentation down the line on other aspects, right? Because if you can start arguing that digital sales aren't actual legal ownership, or they can take your legal ownership away at any time, and that's what they're allowed to do, then I think you have a bigger issue that could rise and be litigated against down the line. So if you can get stuff like that, yeah.
Undercut, which can drag the price lower still. Obviously, a digital storefront does not have that pressure. If there were other digital stores, that may not be the case, and that is why
Going back to it, by the way, welcome,
UK
Master Builder.
pushing to get
It's no
us
worries,
back to the market
no
we
worries,
had
my friend.
before
Glad to have you
2019.
along.
That's because in 2019, PlayStation created a wedge that all of these challengers can use. And unfortunately, it's that is the best angle of attack. Because the EU have confirmed that they can't force PlayStation to keep printing discs. In a statement given to
Sure, the EU can't force PlayStation to keep printing discs, but they can regulate them out of existence if they really wanted to.
the Irish Mirror, EU Commissioner for Consumer Protection Michael McGrath
Wouldn't that
spelled
be
out
funny?
that the EU's rules on corporate activity do allow for PlayStation to sell games on their platform however they want.
Listen, I'm slowly collecting European nationalities as like a Thanos gauntlet, like I'm collecting the Infinity Stones so that I can just snap my fingers and say, Master Builder, could you please translate that for me? Just so that I can sit here and be like totally 100% informed.
They damn well please. That's not his quote. Here's his quote. It does come down to commercial and contractual freedoms, and companies are free to offer
It does feel
games
good
and
to be able to be
services
like,
in a
hey,
manner that they
does
see
anybody
fit,
actually know what this
provided that
says
consumer
instead of
rights
having
are
to
fully
rely on my
protected
own
in line
American
with
senses?
national and EU
Because there's a lot of
law.
cultural
Now, he then
context that
on
goes
to
into
link the
translations
statement to
too,
stop
right?
killing games efforts in Europe, but at the core, this is a fundamentally different story.
Just don't get a French one in here. Listen, there's at least one French guy out there or French girl out there, we don't know yet, who's mostly palatable. I know they exist. We'll find them. We will. We gotta create a space for them.
The EU cannot force PlayStation to produce physical discs in just the same way it can't force Pocket Parrots.
Fine, I'll do it myself.
If
you want to go off and learn French, if we've inspired you to go off and learn French, good luck.
With the company. And right now,
Godspeed.
the only thing we know that influences it is the potential.
It better not be that 17th century peasant French they speak in Quebec. I'm sorry, that was so. It's really funny that there's a lot of animosity, apparently, or at least there was, between Quebecois and French-speaking from people from France.
For more revenue. And that means that the product decision side of things is basically untouchable.
Oh, wait, no,
But
get the
what
French. I want to
is,
watch the flames.
legally touchable, and what could be useful
We'll put out our French lure. We've got like one of those old-fashioned like cartoony like ankle nooses that's just hanging on a thing, and inside we've got like cheese and wine. You did for 1 year, failed real bad. I wasn't the best at French either. Don't worry about it.
To push back against what Sony is doing is prices, and that is where this fight is heading. So the real fight, the one that can actually be
cheese,
won,
wine, and
is
cigarettes.
Not about discs. It is about competition, and the courts will decide that question. But for many advocacy bodies, even a win there wouldn't be enough. The fight that actually matters going forward is digital purchases having basically
same,
the rights
Colin.
That a disc perhaps used
I
to
remember
carry,
some of it though. I've actually used it
to use
a lot,
rights.
believe it or
and Here's
not.
how the argument is put forward for the Electronic
But it's been so long
Foundation
since I've
by
spoken
Rory Muir
Spanish.
and Suzanne Callisto.
At least a
Here's their
decade.
argument. In a download-only world, American internet simply isn't consistently good enough.
This true. I can totally understand this. Where I'm assuming that they're talking about like American internet infrastructure is like kind of dog shit, and it really is. Like it really is just dog shit. I have a way that I can fix it, but it's not going to get fixed anytime soon, unfortunately.
This ultimately ends with the customers turned into renters. And without resale rights or DRM-free ownership, your digital goods are not actually yours. The solution does not come from PlayStation. It has to come from standards and political infrastructure changing, led by engaged voters and activists. And that fight belongs to more people than the disc buyers. You could never have owned a PlayStation disc in your life, and this would still reach your wallet. Because when the last competing price disappears, the walled
You were so mad you had to say it twice.
garden sets your price.
No worries, I get it
From
though.
2028, on PlayStation, just one
The French just get me that mad too. Arrgh.
company decides what a game costs and how long it's yours. That is a far more important and rather different storm than the one that PlayStation currently finds themselves.
See, as long as you can read English, because usually those things are also in English, because, you know, us Americans, we impose on everybody else by saying, I can't read that. Not again. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's funny.
This end of physical games, it is absolutely going to propel global efforts, be it in what the EFF were putting forward there, or just, of course, on the whole price control and antitrust thing. Those could hurt so
It did.
massively.
It added to it 100%.
I have to imagine that within Xbox, there are people thinking, could we put a disk drive in Project Helix? And if we did that, would we look like the reigning gamer champion, just like...
I'm going to go ahead and say that this is optimistic. I think that the Xbox is probably looking, like the Xbox team is probably looking at that, trying to see where it goes, because I guarantee you, if this all blows over with zero punishment for Sony, they're not having a disk drive. It's gone. Disk drives are gone. That's why we have to stop this. We have to nip this problem in the bud right now. It stops here. You do not get to continue to injure your consumer base by taking away their ownership or usurp their ownership, essentially, and get away with it. Because once you get away with it, everybody's going to get away with it. We can't allow it for not only just the sake of Sony, but for the sake of all the video game industry and all other industries that rely on physical copies.
What Sony did to us all the way back in the days of the Xbox One announcement and Don Matrick. Obviously, we'll keep.
It's going to take us a really long time to fight against it.
Want another important story? It's really fascinating. Check out this one next.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Bellular, for covering these things. These things are super important to cover because, like, yeah, they might not be the most exciting things. I find them to be incredibly exciting because it's like kind of like the war stories behind the scenes. But they're important because they directly impact you as a consumer. And unfortunately, if you don't pay attention to it, hope the problem goes away, the problem will never go away. They have a vested interest in making sure that you don't pay attention to it so that they can essentially take advantage of you.